The tears stung Amelia Hayes's eyes as she stumbled out onto the porch of the Silver Dollar Dance Hall, the cool night air of Deadwood, South Dakota doing nothing to ease the burning shame on her cheeks. Inside, the spring social of 1876 continued without her, the fiddles and laughter mocking her humiliation as surely as Trevor McAllister had when he'd abandoned her mid-dance for the prettier, wealthier Catherine Beaumont. 22 years of life, and she'd never felt more foolish than standing alone on that dance floor, whispers rising around her like a dust storm. "Miss, you all right out here?" The deep voice startled her, and Amelia hastily wiped at her tears, refusing to let another soul witness her distress. "Perfectly fine," she replied, not turning to face the stranger. "Just needed some air." A handkerchief appeared in her peripheral vision, held by a weathered, tanned hand. "Don't seem fine to me, madam." Amelia reluctantly accepted the offering, finally turning to face the owner of that gentle voice. He stood taller than most men she'd encountered, lean but broad-shouldered, with eyes the color of a summer sky and sandy brown hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. Not handsome in the conventional way of the town dandies, but striking in his quiet strength. "I'm Wade Irwin," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "Foreman at the Double R, Amelia Hayes," she replied, dabbing at her eyes with his handkerchief. "Thank you for your concern, Mr. Irwin, but I assure you I'm quite—" "I saw what happened in there," he interrupted gently. "That weren't right, leaving you standing there like that." Amelia's throat tightened. "It appears Mr. McAllister found better company." "Better." Wade's expression shifted to something between amusement and disbelief. "Miss Hayes, that man wouldn't know better if it walked up and introduced itself." Despite herself, Amelia felt a small smile tug at her lips. "You're kind to say so, not kindness when it's the truth." Wade glanced back toward the dance hall door. Would be a shame to let a beautiful night go to waste on account of one fool's poor judgment. He extended his hand toward her. "May I have this dance, Miss Hayes?" Amelia hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. "There's no music out here." "Sure there is," Wade replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Listen closer." Through the walls, the faint strains of a waltz filtered into the night. With a mixture of uncertainty and something that felt dangerously like hope, Amelia placed her hand in his. And for the first time that night, she truly danced. Wade Irwin hadn't planned on attending the spring social. Ranch work kept him busy, and fancy gatherings weren't typically his idea of enjoyment. But the ranch owner had insisted his foreman make an appearance, something about building community relations. Now, as he guided Amelia Hayes in a simple waltz across the wooden porch of the Silver Dollar, he found himself grateful for his boss's persistence. "You dance well for a cowboy," Amelia observed, her earlier tears now dry. "My ma wouldn't have it any other way," Wade replied. "Said a man ought to know how to be proper even if he spends most days in the saddle." She sounds like a wise woman. The wisest. The music inside transitioned to a livelier tune, but neither made a move to break apart. Instead, Wade slowed their pace. "If you don't mind my asking, Miss Hayes, what brings you to Deadwood? You don't seem born to these parts." Amelia's smile dimmed slightly. "My father passed away last winter." "Consumption. I came to live with my aunt who runs the millinery shop on Main Street." "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. And you, Mr. Irwin, are you Deadwood born and raised?" Wade shook his head. "Texas originally. Came up with a cattle drive 5 years back and decided to stay." The Black Hills have a way of making a man want to put down roots. They continued their impromptu dance as the night deepened around them, conversation flowing with surprising ease between two strangers finding unexpected comfort in each other's company. When the music finally stopped and the dance hall doors burst open with departing revelers, Wade reluctantly released Amelia from their dance, though he kept hold of her hand. "May I escort you home, Miss Hayes?" Amelia nodded, acutely aware of Trevor McAllister exiting the hall with Catherine Beaumont on his arm, neither sparing a glance in her direction. Somehow, the slight no longer stung as sharply as it had an hour before. I would appreciate that, Mr. Irwin. As they walked through the muddy streets of Deadwood, illuminated by the occasional lantern light from saloon windows, Wade kept a respectful distance while maintaining his gentle hold on her hand. The night air carried the scent of pine from the surrounding hills, mingling with the more immediate smells of horses, tobacco, and whiskey that defined frontier towns like theirs. "My aunt's shop is just ahead," Amelia said as they approached a modest two-story building with Hayes Millinery painted on a wooden sign above the door. "The living quarters are upstairs." Wade slowed their pace. "Miss Hayes," he began, suddenly seeming less sure of himself than he had during their dance. "I wonder if you might permit me to call on you properly. Perhaps this Sunday after church." Amelia studied his face in the dim light, searching for any sign of mockery or deceit, finding only earnest hope. "I would like that very much, Mr. Irwin." His smile in response was worth every moment of humiliation she'd endured earlier in the evening. "Then I'll be here at noon," he promised, finally releasing her hand as they reached the shop door. "Good night, Mr. Irwin. Good night, Miss Hayes." He tipped his hat once more before turning back toward the livery where his horse awaited. Amelia watched him go, her hand still warm from his touch, wondering if perhaps being cast aside at the dance had been the best thing that could have happened to her. Sunday couldn't come quickly enough. Aunt Beatrice noticed the change in Amelia immediately the following morning. "You're humming," she observed as they prepared the shop for opening. "I thought you'd be sulking after that McAllister boy's behavior last night." Amelia arranged a new display of ribbon-adorned bonnets, trying to appear nonchalant. "It was unfortunate, but hardly worth dwelling on." Beatrice's knowing gaze followed her niece around the shop. "And would a certain tall cowboy have anything to do with your improved spirits?" "Mrs. Peterson mentioned seeing you dancing with a stranger on the porch of the Silver Dollar." Heat rose to Amelia's cheeks. "News travels fast in this town." "Faster than a prairie fire," Beatrice agreed with a chuckle. "So, who is he?" "His name is Wade Irwin. He's the foreman at the Double R." Amelia busied herself with straightening already straight hats. "He's coming to call on Sunday after church." Beatrice's eyebrows shot up. "Well now, and here I thought you'd sworn off men entirely after that banking clerk in Philadelphia broke your heart." "That was different," Amelia replied, though in truth, she was surprising herself with her willingness to give Wade a chance after vowing to focus solely on rebuilding her life following her move west. "Mr. Irwin seems different. Different can be good," Beatrice nodded approvingly. "The Double R is a respectable outfit. Owner's an Easterner who invested smart in cattle. If his foreman's coming to call, that speaks well of the man's character." The bell above the shop door jingled, announcing their first customer of the day, and Amelia gratefully turned her attention to work, though her mind frequently wandered to thoughts of sky-blue eyes and a gentle, strong hand holding hers. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild spring weather. Amelia found herself changing outfits 3 times before settling on her best blue calico dress with white lace trim at the collar and cuffs. She twisted her auburn hair into a simple but elegant knot at the nape of her neck, allowing a few tendrils to frame her face. "You look lovely," Aunt Beatrice assured her as they walked together to the small white church at the edge of town. "Stop fidgeting with your collar or you'll wrinkle it before services even begin." Amelia dropped her hand, trying to calm her nerves. What if Wade had merely been kind to a distressed woman and now regretted his invitation? What if their easy conversation had been nothing more than politeness? Her worries dissolved the moment they entered the church, and she spotted him seated near the back, freshly shaved and wearing a clean white shirt with a string tie, his usually unruly hair tamed with pomade. When he caught sight of her, his entire face brightened in a way that made Amelia's heart skip. Throughout the service, she felt his gaze on her, and when Reverend Tompkins finally gave the benediction, she found herself hurrying through the customary post-church greetings, eager to reach the tall cowboy waiting patiently by the hitching post. "Miss Hayes," Wade greeted her, his hat in his hands. "You look beautiful today." "Thank you, Mr. Irwin. You clean up quite nicely yourself." His smile widened. "Been told I scrub up decent enough when the occasion calls for it." He turned to acknowledge Aunt Beatrice with a respectful nod. "Madam, I'm Wade Irwin, foreman at the Double R, Beatrice Hayes," she replied, assessing him with a shrewd gaze. "My niece tells me you're calling on her today." "Yes, madam, with your permission." Wade stood straight under her scrutiny. "I thought I might take Miss Hayes for a ride out to Miller's Creek for a picnic lunch. I've packed provisions and promised to have her home before sundown." Beatrice's expression softened slightly. "A picnic sounds lovely." Amelia could use some fresh air and sunshine after being cooped up in the shop all week. Relief crossed Wade's features. "Thank you, madam." He turned back to Amelia. "I've got my wagon ready whenever you are." The wagon turned out to be a well-maintained buckboard with a sorrel gelding in harness. Wade helped Amelia up to the seat with gentle hands at her waist before climbing up beside her. With a flick of the reins, they were off, leaving the dusty streets of Deadwood behind for the verdant hills beyond. "I worried you might change your mind," Amelia admitted as they followed a well-worn trail alongside the creek. "About seeing you." Wade looked genuinely surprised. "Not a chance, Miss Hayes." "Amelia," she offered, "if we're to be friends, you might as well use my given name." "Amelia," he repeated, as if testing the feel of it on his tongue. "It suits you, and I'm Wade, of course." The picnic spot Wade had chosen was perfect, a grassy clearing beside Miller's Creek, where cottonwood trees provided dappled shade. He spread a blanket on the ground and unpacked a feast far more elaborate than Amelia had expected: fried chicken, biscuits, apple preserves, and even a small cake from the town bakery. "This is wonderful," she said, settling onto the blanket. "Did you prepare all this yourself?" Wade looked sheepish. "The ranch cook took pity on me, said no lady deserves my cooking on a first outing." Amelia laughed, the sound carrying across the clearing. "Honest as well as kind. You're full of surprises, Wade Irwin." They ate and talked, learning each other's stories bit by bit. Wade told her about growing up on a small farm in Texas, losing both parents to fever when he was 17, and finding his way in the world through his skill with horses and cattle. Amelia shared memories of her father, a professor of literature who had filled their Philadelphia home with books and ideas, and her struggles to adjust to the rougher, simpler life of the Dakota territory. "You miss the city?" Wade asked as they strolled along the creek bank after their meal, their hands occasionally brushing against each other. Amelia considered the question. "I miss certain things: the libraries, the theaters, the predictability of it all. But there's something about the wildness here, the possibility of it, as if life hasn't been all mapped out yet." Wade nodded in understanding. "That's why I stayed. Out here, a man is measured by what he does, not where he came from or who his daddy was." "And what do you hope to do, Wade?" she asked, genuinely curious about his ambitions. He hesitated, as if weighing whether to share something close to his heart. "I've been saving. Nearly have enough for a small spread of my own. Nothing fancy, mind you, but enough land for a decent herd and a good horse breeding program." "That sounds wonderful," Amelia said, touched by his willingness to share his dream with her. "What about you?" he asked. "Is Deadwood just a temporary stop for you?" The question gave her pause. Until this moment, she had indeed viewed her time in Deadwood as temporary, a necessary refuge until she determined her next move. But now, looking at the man beside her, she wasn't so certain. "I haven't decided yet," she answered honestly. "I suppose I'm still finding my place." Wade reached for her hand then, his calloused fingers entwining with hers with gentle surety. "I hope you find reason to stay." Their eyes met, and Amelia felt something shift between them, a recognition of possibilities neither had anticipated before this moment. When he leaned down to kiss her cheek, his lips warm against her skin, she knew with certainty that her heart was in serious danger where Wade Irwin was concerned. True to his word, Wade returned Amelia to her aunt's shop before sundown. though both seemed reluctant for the day to end. Standing beside the wagon, he held her hand in his thumb tracing small circles on her palm. "May I see you again?" he asked, his voice low. "I would be disappointed if you didn't," Amelia replied with a smile. "Wednesday, I need to ride into town for supplies." "Perhaps we could have dinner at the hotel restaurant?" "I would like that very much." As Wade drove away, Amelia felt lighter than she had in months, perhaps years. She turned to find Aunt Beatrice watching from the shop doorway, and knowing smile on her face. "That's a good man," her aunt said simply. "Yes," Amelia agreed, her hand still tingling from Wade's touch. "I believe he is." The weeks that followed passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing affection. Wade found reasons to come to town more frequently than ranch business strictly required, and Amelia discovered a newfound interest in delivering hats to customers who happened to live along the road to the Double R. They attended church together each Sunday, followed by picnics or walks or quiet conversations on the bench outside the millinery. By midsummer, all of Deadwood recognized them as a courting couple. Trevor McAllister, who had once caused Amelia such humiliation, now tipped his hat respectfully when they passed on the street, his eyes lingering on her with something like regret. "I think McAllister's finally realized what he lost," Wade observed after one such encounter as they strolled arm in arm down Main Street. "His loss, your gain," Amelia teased, though she felt a flash of unease at the reminder of that night. "The greatest gain of my life," Wade replied with such sincerity that Amelia's unease melted away. He stopped walking, turning to face her in the middle of the busy street, oblivious to the traffic flowing around them. "Amelia, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her heart flutter anxiously. "What is it?" "I've put in my notice at the Double R. You're leaving?" Her voice cracked on the words. "No," Wade was quick to reassure her. "I'm staying right here in Deadwood. Remember that land I told you I was saving for?" "I've bought it. 200 acres along Whitewood Creek, about 5 miles outside town. Good grazing land with plenty of water and a small cabin that needs work but is sound." Relief flooded through Amelia, followed quickly by happiness for him. "Wade, that's wonderful, your own ranch at last." "It's not much yet," he cautioned. "Just land and hope, really, but it's mine." His eyes searched hers. "I was wondering if you might ride out with me tomorrow to see it. I'd value your opinion." "I would be honored." The land Wade had purchased exceeded Amelia's expectations. Rolling hills dotted with ponderosa pine, a clear creek cutting through meadows lush with summer grass, and views that stretched to the distant mountains. The cabin was indeed small and rough, but as Wade showed her around the property, his enthusiasm was contagious. "The previous owner was a prospector who gave up on finding gold," he explained as they stood on a rise overlooking the valley. "His loss is my gain. Land's worth more than gold in the long run, if you ask me." "It's beautiful, Wade," Amelia said, genuinely impressed by his choice. "I thought we might picnic by that cottonwood grove down there," he suggested, pointing toward a cluster of trees near a bend in the creek. After tethering his horse, Wade helped Amelia spread the blanket he'd brought. They settled in the dappled shade, the sound of water flowing over rocks creating a peaceful backdrop to their meal of cold chicken and biscuits. "I've been thinking," Wade said after they'd eaten, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "This land, this dream of mine. It's going to be a lot of work. Building something from nothing always is." "You're not afraid of work," Amelia observed. "It's one of the things I admire most about you." Wade's expression softened at her words. "Thing is, Amelia, I've realized lately that dreams change. Or rather, they grow to include more than you first imagined." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small object that caught the sunlight filtering through the leaves. A simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center. "My mother's," he explained, holding it reverently. "The only thing of value I have from her, save the lessons she taught me." His eyes, bluer than the summer sky above them, met Amelia's with unwavering purpose. I came west looking for land of my own, but I found something far more precious. I found you." Amelia's breath caught as Wade moved to kneel before her on the blanket. "Amelia Hayes, I love you. I think I've loved you since that night you let a dusty cowboy dance with you on the porch of the Silver Dollar. Would you do me the greatest honor of becoming my wife? Of building this dream with me side by side?" Tears welled in Amelia's eyes, but unlike those she'd shed the night they met, these were born of joy. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Wade Irwin, I will marry you." His hands trembled slightly as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit as if made for her. Wade gathered her into his arms, his kiss conveying all the love words alone couldn't express. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and giddy with happiness, Wade rested his forehead against hers. "I promise you, Amelia, I'll never let go of your hand again." "I'm going to hold you to that promise," she replied, sealing it with another kiss. News of their engagement spread quickly through Deadwood. Aunt Beatrice, having anticipated this development for weeks, was already making plans for the wedding. "Nothing extravagant," she declared as she closed the shop early to celebrate with her niece, "but proper. A new beginning deserves to be marked with dignity." Wade agreed, though he confessed to Amelia privately that he would marry her in a stable if that's what it took to make her his wife sooner rather than later. "Patient as well as handsome," she teased, kissing his cheek. "Truly, I am a fortunate woman." They settled on a date in late September, when the aspens would be turning gold in the hills, and the most pressing work of summer would be complete. Wade threw himself into preparing the cabin on his new land, determined to make it a worthy home for his bride. Amelia divided her time between helping at the millinery and assembling the basics they would need to begin their life together. Not everyone in town was pleased by their happiness. Catherine Beaumont, who had long since been abandoned by the fickle Trevor McAllister, made a point of commenting loudly in the general store that she couldn't imagine why a handsome man like Wade Irwin would settle for Philadelphia leftovers. Amelia, who overheard the remark while selecting fabric for curtains, felt her face burn with humiliation. Though she had grown more confident in Wade's affections, old insecurities lingered from that night at the dance. Wade found her later that evening sitting on the bench outside the millinery, her eyes red from crying. "Aunt Beatrice told me what happened," he said, settling beside her and taking her hand. "Catherine Beaumont isn't worth your tears, Amelia." "I know," she sighed. "It's foolish to let her words affect me so. But sometimes I still wonder why you chose me that night, when you could have had any woman in that dance hall." Wade's expression grew serious. "You want to know why I approached you that night?" He turned her hand over in his, tracing the lines of her palm as if reading a map. "I'd been watching you all evening, not in a way that's improper," he hastened to add. "But I couldn't help noticing how you smiled when you greeted people, how you made that old widow Mrs. Jenkins laugh when no one else bothered to speak with her." Amelia looked up in surprise. "You noticed that?" "I notice everything about you, Amelia." "I was working up the courage to ask you to dance when that fool McAllister left you standing there. I was angry on your behalf, but also grateful." At her questioning look, he continued, "Grateful for the chance to speak with you without half the men in town competing for your attention." "So you took pity on me," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "No," Wade's voice was firm. "I recognized something in you that I'd been looking for without knowing it. Kindness, strength, a heart that feels deeply." His hand cupped her cheek. "The moment you placed your hand in mine for that dance, I knew I never wanted to let it go." The sincerity in his eyes banished Amelia's doubts. She leaned forward to kiss him, unconcerned about who might see them on the public street. "I love you, Wade Irwin, and I love you, Amelia Hayes." Soon to be Amelia Irwin. The day of their wedding dawned clear and cool, the first hint of autumn crispness in the air. The small church was filled with well-wishers' ranch hands from the Double R, customers from the millinery, and the various townspeople who had watched their courtship unfold over the summer months. Amelia wore a dress of ivory silk that she and Aunt Beatrice had worked on during every spare moment of the past month, embellished with pearl buttons saved from her mother's wedding gown. As she walked down the aisle on the arm of Mr. Peterson, the general store owner who had kindly offered to give her away in her father's absence, her eyes never left Wade's. He stood tall and proud at the altar, cleaned up beyond recognition from his usual working attire, his expression a mixture of awe and devotion that made Amelia's heart swell. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Tompkins began, his voice carrying through the hushed church, "we are gathered here today in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." The service passed in a blur for Amelia, though she would always remember the gentle tremor in Wade's hands as he placed the wedding band on her finger, and the quiet conviction in his voice as he recited his vows. "I, Wade, take you, Amelia, to be my lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us part." When the Reverend finally pronounced them husband and wife, Wade's kiss was both tender and promising, a pledge of all the days to come. The celebration afterward at the town hall was joyous but simple, with food contributed by half the women in Deadwood and music provided by local fiddlers. Wade never left Amelia's side, his hand in hers just as he had promised on that first night. As twilight fell, they slipped away from the festivities to begin the journey to their new home. Wade had insisted on keeping some of his improvements to the cabin a surprise, and Amelia gasped in delight when they arrived to find it transformed. Fresh white paint brightened the exterior, curtains hung at windows that gleamed with new glass, and a porch swing swayed gently in the evening breeze. "Oh, Wade," she breathed as he lifted her down from the wagon. "It's wonderful." "Wait until you see inside," he said, scooping her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. The interior had been just as thoughtfully prepared. A cheerful fire blazed in the stone hearth, casting warm light over the polished wooden floors and simple but sturdy furniture. Colorful rag rugs softened the space, and on the table sat a vase of wildflowers beside two place settings. "I thought you might be hungry after all that dancing," Wade explained, setting her gently on her feet. "Nothing fancy, just some of Mrs. Wilson's stew keeping warm on the back of the stove." "It's perfect," Amelia assured him, taking in the small but inviting space that was now their home. "All of it." Later, as they lay tangled in each other's arms beneath the quilt Aunt Beatrice had gifted them, Amelia traced the line of Wade's jaw with her fingertips. "Happy?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "More than I ever imagined possible," she answered truthfully. "And you?" "I have everything I've ever wanted right here," Wade replied, drawing her closer. "The land, the dream, and most importantly, you by my side." Amelia rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you ever think about that night at the dance? How different our lives might have been if Trevor hadn't abandoned me on the dance floor?" Wade was quiet for a moment, his hand moving in slow circles on her back. "I believe we would have found each other somehow," he said finally. "Some things are meant to be, Amelia. Like a cowboy taking the hand of a beautiful woman and never letting go." In the years that followed, the Irwin Ranch flourished under their combined efforts. The small herd grew. The horse breeding program Wade had envisioned became known throughout the territory for quality stock, and the cabin expanded to accommodate their growing family. Their first child, a son they named William after Wade's father, arrived exactly 9 months after their wedding night, strong and healthy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. 2 years later came Emma, with auburn curls and a laugh that brightened even the darkest winter days. By the time their third child, Henry, joined the family, the Irwin Ranch had become one of the most successful operations in the Black Hills. Amelia never returned to Philadelphia, finding in Deadwood and the surrounding hills a home far more fulfilling than the city of her birth. She maintained the millinery with Aunt Beatrice until her aunt's passing, then transformed it into a small bookshop that became a center of community learning and discussion. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Wade surprised Amelia with a new porch swing to replace the one that had weathered a decade of Dakota winters. As they sat together in the golden light of sunset, watching their children play in the yard that had once been nothing but wild grass, Amelia rested her head on her husband's shoulder. "Any regrets?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Wade's arm tightened around her waist, his hand finding hers just as it had that night outside the Silver Dollar. "Not a single one," he replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Every day with you has been a blessing beyond what I deserve." Amelia turned her face to his, the love between them as strong and true as it had been on their wedding day. "I was cast aside that night, but you found me. You took my hand and kept your promise never to let go." "And I never will," Wade vowed, sealing his words with a kiss as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of promise fulfilled and dreams still unfolding before them.